At the outset, let me express my sincere condolences to all those listening who have lost loved ones and suffered in other ways as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. What will be the new normal of higher education and international education post-COVID-19? The new normal will be a significant shift in higher education. COVID-19 is affecting us globally, nationally, regionally, in our local communities, in our households, and at a deeply personal level. It's making us stop, think, reevaluate, and reconsider our priorities and values, what is important at every level, including higher education and international higher education. As such, COVID-19 is a global disruptor of higher education teaching, learning, and management. It is demanding that we leave the comfort zones of our traditional and current practices, and it is forcing us to re-examine how we conduct the higher education enterprise with urgency. While the disruption is a cause of anxiety, it also provides an opportunity for a fundamental and radical rethink. COVID-19 has made it imperative to experiment and innovate in ways that will radically change how we think and how we undertake teaching and learning going forward, beyond this time and when the pandemic is finally under control. It's a catalyst for creativity and an accelerator of innovation. I think we will see new teaching and learning methodologies and technologies emerging out of this period. On the one hand, the disruption of COVID-19 and the imperative for social distancing for the foreseeable future has forced the higher education community in many parts of the world to communicate more creatively and more frequently using different forms of technology. As we become more adept at using these platforms, we will increase the frequency of distance and digital communication, both in higher education and international higher education, in the post-COVID-19 world. We will perhaps reduce the frequency and expense of physical travelling for face-to-face meetings and activities. While a certain amount of international mobility will continue, we may see a reluctance to travel unless it is absolutely necessary. In countries where students have choices about their higher education destination, we may see a drop in the international flow of students going abroad to certain destinations. The debates and indecision about the need for technology and online methodology will have shifted from do we use this technology to what platforms do we use, and how do we incorporate this as a fundamental part of ongoing activities, rather than should we use them. In a post-COVID-19 world, as a result of the lockdown experience, we are likely to see an increase in self-awareness and a greater willingness for academics to adapt to the new conditions of teaching and learning, as the traditional ways were just not possible. Perceptions have been challenged, and methodologies that certain individuals were not open to engaging with will be mastered. COVID-19 has stopped us in our tracks. It has given us a glimpse of an alternative future, and if humans behave in different ways, especially in connection with the environment and climate change, this glimpse will filter into curriculum content, how we undertake teaching and learning, and the management of such teaching and learning going forward. Change is inevitable, and this is a moment to hope that change of our entrenched ways of doing things will bring new possibilities and better ways of doing things. On the other hand, COVID-19 restrictions have exacerbated and amplified the plight of people living in poverty and insecure and challenging social conditions, including those reliant on informal sector employment with no social security safety nets. How do you comply with social distancing when you live in a cramped, urban, informal settlement where there is no distance between you and your neighbours? How do communities where there is no running water wash their hands for 20 seconds or hand sanitize if products are not accessible? Large groups of the student population in higher education come from these backgrounds, and it's not only the students in developing countries who face such challenges. There are also students living in deep poverty in more developed countries who also have trouble complying with these conditions. The post-COVID-19 higher education and international education world will have exacerbated and made even more starkly visible the existing inequalities in higher education systems, individual institutions, and individual students' living conditions. If we take the example of South Africa, COVID-19 restrictions and lockdown in South Africa forced the university community to stop their face-to-face activities and to engage with technology. The issue of the digital divide and disparities between higher education institutions who are proactively engaging with the fourth industrial revolution and those who are still grappling with more basic resource issues was widely explored at the IEASA conference in August 2019. The decision to move to online teaching and learning is proving very challenging in some instances for the leadership, the academics and the students involved, especially in historically disadvantaged institutions, and for all students living in poverty in challenging situations. Addressing the challenges that have been identified require resourcing. South African universities in the main have been extremely constrained financially in the wake of the Fees Must Fall movement and the steady declining subsidy for higher education relative to the needs. Several universities do not have the budget to access new platforms or to reconfigure the way of working relative to the increasing needs. Where there are online platforms available and set up for some academics, it requires preparing lectures in different ways to what might have initially been planned, acquiring new technological skills and adapting to a completely new way of working. Working from home, an ongoing requirement, is challenging for many people. People live in a wide variety of circumstances and not all shared homes are conducive or have an appropriate space to work at home. For many students, once the face-to-face element of being on campus with access to the institutional shared facilities and resources disappear, the conducive learning environment also disappears. From the university leadership perspective, discussions and appeals and negotiations abound regarding students getting access to data, laptops, electricity. Some student bodies are objecting to the universities moving to online platforms as the access for students varies so greatly. Even if the technological issues can be resolved, there are still challenges regarding connectivity in many of the rural areas for some of our international students from other parts of Africa, as well as those living in South Africa. While we are definitely going to be doing things differently, we are still going to be facing the challenges of inequality in new and different ways. On international higher education, we will see that the purpose of international higher education remains as important and perhaps even more important than ever before, considering the global nature of the challenges that face us in the post-COVID world. We have seen that things that are decided at national level, policies decided at national level, impact on other places in the world. We don't live in islands. I think we will see a reduction in the physical international mobility for a period, especially with students on short courses and semester abroad, but also some of the students that would have intended to be full-time international students. As physical international mobility decreases, I think we will see an increase in internationalisation at home, internationalisation of the curriculum, and collaborative online learning initiatives, COIL. And I expect to see some really innovative ways of doing these activities emerging over this period of time. We will also see an increase in the webinars and online events of international associations. Perhaps there will be less frequent face-to-face conferences and events for a while. I do think there will be an aftershock from the restriction of COVID-19, with people minimising international travel for a while, as the possibility of getting stranded in another country becomes very real, with lockdowns and the reduction of international flights. While the situation is not entirely predictable, I think we will have taken a great leap forward in our thinking, we will have learned lessons, and we will not be working with the same assumptions going forward. How we practically implement those learnings and insights and overcome those challenges will be our main preoccupation for the rest of 2020. It is highly likely that with the shutdown of universities, we're going to see more financial constraints. Fees will not have come in, subsidy will not have come in necessarily across the board, and we will see some students having to drop out because they weren't able to continue with online access over this period. As such, we may find that international offices in universities come under fire for budget cuts. They're one of the first parts of the institution that are likely to face cuts, and therefore when, even though the agenda might be more important, we may find that there are also some more financial constraints for internationalization going forward. So I think that that's basically what all we can say is that it's going to be challenging times. We're going to be working with new insights, but we're probably also going to face some quite difficult times and need to be even more creative. Thank you.